This is really your FERPA 101, Introduction to Legality, Rights and Responsibilities. Hey, can I get sued? Is my employment contract going to be terminated? You know, come on, that's a joke. You're not going to get fired. Everybody thinks FERPA means I'm going to get fired. It does not mean that. Okay? Does anybody have some familiarity with FERPA from teaching already? A couple of you? Okay. So you're like, oh, I got to sit through this again. I promise I'll teach you at least one thing new. Okay, so let's start with a little bit of a laugh. Okay? Why did the chicken cross the road? I'm sorry, I can't tell you without a release. Come on, it's funny, right? I mean, it's not, Tosh 2.0. I'm not on Comedy Central, but it's funny. See? You got to keep your sense of humor. We will check to see if the chicken has a FERPA confidentiality agreement on file. So what we're going to do within this next hour, a little bit under an hour, we're just going to talk about FERPA. I am the registrar. I do not have a Juris Doctorate. I am not a lawyer. I do not profess to know all the ins and outs of FERPA, but I do study it a lot and work with it every single day. But we're going to break it down into really approachable chunks. You're welcome to, I'll give you the link at the end. You can read the whole policy document, and I guarantee you it will put you to sleep quicker than Tylenol PM. So this is a way to give it to you in bite-sized chunks that you'll really be able to use. We're going to talk about what FERPA is, where can you find information for your job, where can students find information, and here's the kicker. Where can the mamas and the daddies find information, right? You know there's momsters out there. I'm one of them, but mine's 6, so I can still be a momster, okay? We're going to talk about some key terms, and we're just going to discuss the process of how students can provide access to their account, kind of what your responsibilities are as a faculty member here at the college, and kind of the fail-safes of before you release information, what you should know. Stop me at any time if you have a question. FERPA is not new, okay? It's been around since 1974. I distinctly remember when I was in college that our grades would be posted by our UNC Chapel Hill student ID number on the outside of the door. I will tell you that was post-1974. So although the legislation has been active for quite some time, it did take some time to really gain up speed and momentum, and with each passing year there's new considerations that the federal government wants to take into place. So think about FERPA, and these are the 3 main bullets. FERPA allows, it requires an institution protect the confidentiality of student records. If you can think about things that might have been going on in the 70s, you think about Vietnam War protests on college campuses, you think about continuing civil rights movements activism. For some universities of higher education, information was released in a in an inappropriate manner against these students. So just think about the cultural context. That's where FERPA really came into place in '74. So number 1, the big thing is we're protecting students' educational records. The second thing, which can really be the most complicated matter, is that students are allowed the right to inspect their educational records. I've got some really great horror stories from the 6 years that I've been here at Wake Tech about what all is involved when a student requests to inspect their educational record. Okay? And it also provides guidance for the correction of incorrect information. So if a student has an incorrect Social Security number on file with the college, we have a set workflow in the registrar's office that gets updated. Those were the key elements of FERPA, and they still are today. This is mainly repeat. Students must be able to inspect their records, and we may not disclose personally identifiable information. We're going to talk about personally identifiable information, which if you think of what one of the biggest data fields would be with that. What do you not want me to know about you? Exactly. I know it anyway about you, but I'm not going to tell anybody. And then we're going to talk about things that are directory information that you can actually disclose without a student's written permission. Okay, so who is protected by FERPA? This is a confusing piece, so we're going to try to break it down. If a student applies for admission at Wake Tech and we never hear from them again, then FERPA has not kicked in for them. That admissions application is going to be downstairs for 6 months, and then it's going to be shredded, okay? There is no record. But any student who actually takes a class, they walk in that first day, they are enrolled, they log into Blackboard that first day, they're an enrolled student, and FERPA will cover their educational records for the entire length of time that they are at the college, and then it even covers them until they are deceased. We must protect the confidentiality of their records until the student is deceased. We'll talk a little bit about how that plays with alumni affairs. This is a big thing. At Wake Tech, we are very supportive of high school student enrollment within college level classes. Used to be known as dual enrollment in Huskins. Now it's known as Career and College Promise. So you could have high school students in your class. You could have an early graduate that is actually a high school graduate that is not 18 years old. That does not matter. Mama will make you think that because the child is 17, she can know everything, but that is not the case. As soon as the student enrolls in a college level class here at Wake Tech, that includes developmental courses, then the privacy rights transfer to the student and not to the parent. Okay, that's one big thing I want you to take away. And then at the bottom, FERPA does not apply to applicants who are denied admission or to those who we do accept but that they never actually enroll. There's not going to be any data really on them except for that CFNC admissions application that is shredded. Make sense? Anybody got any questions? Falling asleep yet? Okay. An important piece of FERPA is that the college has the responsibility, as do all colleges, receiving federal financial aid from the government, to annually disclose its FERPA policies to its students. At the end of drop ad for this semester, I will send an email to all Wake Tech enrolled students at their Wake Tech email account notifying them of FERPA. I can guarantee you none of them read it. If you haven't figured it out yet, you will as an instructor. We have about a 20% open rate on emails sent to students at their Wake Tech email account. If they cannot be bothered to open an email, you need to text them or Facebook them or tweet them. But opening the email is just asking entirely too much. So students don't know they have rights under FERPA until you get the one who's a, pseudo lawyer in training that really wants to test you out. But as a large proportion of the population, the students don't know about FERPA, but they should. So we send them an email. We have a Wake Tech website. There's a lengthy section in the college catalog that goes into detail about FERPA. And then also another really good resource is the North Carolina Community College System website, which the handout that I gave you is just a quick blurb from them. You don't necessarily need all 30 pages of the PowerPoint hanging up in your office, but this one sheet you may want to hang on to and scope out their website. It just gives you helpful hints as a faculty member of what to do and what not to do. We've talked about annual notification. Written permission is required to disclose student educational records. We're going to talk about how students can access their records. We're not going to leave the parents and the helicopter moms and the popsters and the momsters. We're not going to leave them stranded. They do have routes to access their student information, whether or not the student agrees to that or not. So that's another source of contention that we'll get into. And we talk a lot about legitimate educational interest. Okay? Let's see. All right. So this is pop quiz number 1. Who in here is a school official? Everybody is. You are all school officials. We all have depending on the circumstance, legitimate educational interest in accessing a student's account. Let's see. We have a lot of work-study students at the college. They have to go through FERPA training. So do our student ambassadors, and there are signed confidentiality agreements from those as well. Now, with our colleague student information system, you all may not have the same access. The department head's going to have different access than an instructor's going to have, than a dean's going to have, than the president's going to have. That's our in-house technological way of varying up the layers of access. Because you don't need to have access to a student's enrollment that's not a class that you teach, right? So personally identifiable. This is not rocket science. What identifies a student? Their name, their date of birth, their address, their social security number, and any other list of personal characteristics that would make it easy to identify the student. Okay. This is relatively new, so I do want to talk about it for a minute. When we say directory information, that is information that you can give anyone, when they request it. It needs to come through the registrar's office. But we can release directory information without a student's written consent. If they have not contacted the registrar's office in writing and asked to opt out of directory information, then we can provide students' name, date of birth, address, their major, their dates of enrollment, any credentials received, and college honors without having any written authorization on file. So it's important for students to read that email when we send them the notification every year, so that they will opt out. There truly are situations where students have safety needs and they need to be opted out. We've had students in the witness protection program. We've had students, going through a violent relationship that they were trying to get out of. Students, maybe they just don't want to hear from us, okay? So they can opt out of this at any point in time. What's new is that we're trying to give an added layer of security to our students by breaking out their email and their photo as limited use directory information. So if the man on the street calls me and wants name, address, date of birth, then I can give that to him. I will not be giving the college-issued email account or any photos or media. Being that the students, we want to protect their email. We advocate that their Wake Tech email is their official college email account. That is the one they need to be using to communicate to you. When they email you from Yahoo, please say, your official college email account is the my.waketech.edu email account. That is the one that is their official account. We don't want to give that out to solicitors. And also their photos, that was actually more to help us out, because when we think about the different software platforms and media events that we have, we did an in-house registration last week and we had 100 students in attendance. So instead of going around and getting all 100 to sign an authorization to use their picture in our online blog, they know that they can either opt out or that we could use their photo or likeness. You with me? Yeah.
Amanda, if a student requests that we use their Gmail account, for example, for email, we can go into Blackboard and change it to be that. But is that permissible by the college? It's extra work for us.
There's nothing, well, I don't want to say there's anything punitive about it. But there is, in the fact that we all know that email is not secure. You're going to think you're talking to a parent. It's really the mom that's logged in because they know what the Web Advisor account is, and they've registered the student for 6 semesters, okay? I would not do that. A lot of people do that. But we feel like we have some inherent, even if it's false, control over it. If I know you've had to log into your Wake Tech email with your credentials and that the students had to log in on their credentials, that we can share back and forth. And in a lot of cases, when we send things out from student services, we code them, so we keep a tracking colleague of every email we've ever sent the students, so they can't say, I didn't know, I didn't pay. Then we can say, well, we've sent you 17 payment reminders. I don't like to pay my bills either, but sometimes you have to.
I've also had the experience of if a student is trying to email me from a non-Wake Tech email account, I will not always get the email. It will bounce back or it will just disappear and they'll say, but I emailed you. And I'm like, it's not there. I never got it. But, you know, the ones from Wake Tech.
You haven't had any problems with those. Good, 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 good. It's just a fail-safe for you. Now, I realize that our email is not as glamorous as their Gmail account, but it's still their official email account. If they're placed on suspension, they're going to get it to that email account. They don't check that email account, then they don't know why their registration's blocked, and they can't register for classes because they didn't get the 17 emails about warning, probation, and suspension. So we all just want to share the gospel of the Wake Tech email account.
Are they still covered by FERPA if they don't use their copy of email? Like, does that change the responsibility of privacy if they're emailing us from a different account, or is it simply because it comes to us, we are still bound by FERPA?
Because it comes to you, you're still bound by FERPA.
That was a confusing thing, because
Yes.
originally I heard, if they send you from a private account, it's not under the Public Information Act, it's not, they're not protected. But I'm thinking that's wrong.
It is, and let me tell you, this is a great segue into a horror story. I got to make sure I don't go over. But we have Mr. FERPA that a full moon around August of every year, it's about the same time, that he gets on his FERPA high horse and requests his entire educational record. I want you to wrap your head around how much an entire educational record is. That's every email that's ever been sent to anyone on our college network that referenced the student, all of his assignments, all of his advisor meetings. It takes months to pull it all together. And it didn't matter where the email came from. With this student, there were one associate vice president and one senior vice president that had to disclose 6 months worth of emails inbox and sent regardless of whether it was to the student or not. So he's the horror story. He only aggravates me. You don't have to worry about him. I have a special name for him.
Directory information. So could one student who's in a class actually know and request the address of another student?
Yes, they could, as long as that student did not have a block on their account. It's scary.
Does Wake Tech publish a student directory, hard copy?
We do not. We do not have an online student directory.
I have an official email question. I've had a student's mom email me through his official Wake Tech.
See, I told you it happened.
So do I respond to that mom or respond, it's his official email, respond to the student ignoring that it was his mom? I mean, she signed an email with her name.
Right. In that case, do you have office hours here? Are you accessible by phone any?
Well, not, I haven't been yet. I mean, this is actually, I've gotten an
And
email
another,
for this semester.
okay.
So about the upcoming first day of class. So I need to respond via email, not in office.
The best course would be to encourage the student to come in when they first come to campus if they have any questions that they want to talk to you about. See, we can't confirm it, yeah.
Kind of along those lines, I've been told in the past that we are unable, because of FERPA, to discuss grades over email at all, even if it is using the official Tech email address.
I have 4 special slides dedicated just to that. It's going to make you feel better, I promise, I promise.
Does the directory disclose home addresses?
There is a Wake Tech employee directory, which will disclose your title, your phone number, and your office location. But it always doesn't do that. I think you, as faculty members, may get some special privileges that stuff doesn't always appear. Students can't find you, they can all find me. But it's nothing personal. Like if you put a personal email account on your employment application, none of that's accessible.
What if you were a previous student and now you're a faculty?
Your information would be a part of your educational record as it related to your enrollment.
Okay, once the graduation happens, you pull from the directory or students are able to access?
Anything related to your time enrolled as a student would still fall under this directory information.
I need to put that in there.
So write me. I'll block you. Okay, let me flip through a few more things because I get excited and I don't want to leave you without all this good information. So what is an educational record? Think back in the 70s. Now, we in my office had the only functioning microfilm machine at the college, which I love. I consider it a badge of honor. All of that microfilm is protected FERPA information. So the gist here is just to get you to think that it's regardless of format, okay? God forbid don't get on Facebook and post the student's grade, chatting with them online on Facebook. Just stay off Facebook, okay? I try to get the students to understand that, and they don't get it either. So just some examples of educational records. It could be a document in my office. It could be an email on your computer. You could print out a roster of your students and leave it on your desk. Please don't do that. It could be a class listing displayed on your computer, notes from an advising session. So just to try to get you in the train of thought that the record is not necessarily a piece of paper. That's all we're trying to get across there. But we are going to talk a little bit about sole possession notes and how we want to try to back you up. An educational record is not a sole possession note. It's not law enforcement records. It is not HR records, okay? So, well, yours is reversed because you were a student and now you're an employee. But think vice versa. But your human resources records are not applicable to FERPA. Doctor-patient privilege records. Thank goodness we don't have dormitories at Wake Technical Community College. Because then when you do, you have to think about FERPA, alcohol abuse from a minor, all the crazy things that happen in college dorms, and when there are a campus hospital. Okay, those are still protected under HIPAA. And alumni records are not an educational record. So even though I said FERPA protects your records until you die, when your enrollment ends, then anything you do after that is a part of your alumni record and is not covered by FERPA. So if you disclose to the Alumni Association your title and your new job, that's not going to be stored anywhere that's going to be involved with FERPA and directory information. Okay. Sole possession notes. This is the best part of FERPA that will protect you. We're meeting, let's see, you and I are going to meet. I'm the advisor, you're the student. We're meeting in the office together, and in front of you, I'm taking notes. That's not a sole possession note because you were in my presence when I documented what we spoke about. If I met with you, you did your official advising sheet if you were an advisor. That's a part of their record now. The student leaves, you write down. Now, this is what we get into trouble too as well. When people do a disciplinary, a 1060, no, that's eliminated. Okay. Used to be the Form 1069. Now you're going to use the Maxient software. You'll learn about that tomorrow if you haven't today. For student disciplinary issues. Be objective, subjective, objective. You don't want to write down, this student is a nut, okay? Now you can think it all you want to. But as long as the student was not in your presence when you wrote, this student is a nut, you put it in your locked drawer. That's your sole possession note. That can never be called into a court of law. That's a very, very good. Okay? But when our college transfer advisors meet with the student face-to-face and fill out the advising sheet, that becomes a part of the student educational record. And here is really good advice. If you don't want it reviewed, don't write it down. The student is a nut, I know. Okay, so if you have any piece of information that's maintained by the college It identifies the student. It's not a police record. It's not a health record. It's not a sole possession note. Then you've got a record, and it's subject to FERPA. Okay, here's your question. FERPA and email. The federal government just, either they give you, 7,400 tax codes, or they fail to make any address of a situation, okay? They have failed to put in writing how colleges are mandated to use FERPA and email. If you go out and Google FERPA and email, you're going to find colleges that say you cannot email a student a grade. That's a violation of FERPA. Well, could be, but the Family Privacy Compliance Office that is in charge of FERPA has not provided any concrete direction. So what we've done at Wake Tech and what a lot of other institutions have done is we've crafted an internal policy within the spirit of FERPA that we think covers ourselves quite nicely. Students can be very needy. I would think with everyone having access to Blackboard Gradebook, you would post your grades there, whether it was an online class or not. That is secure. They can access their grades there. I've yet to figure out why this is a problem for students, but they will still contact you and demand that you email them something. I can't figure it out. We spend a lot of money on Blackboard, and we should be using it. So we always want you to use Blackboard, but we do give you the authority to send grades to individuals at their Wake Tech email account when we have their written authorization on file, and these are maintained at your department level. So your departments will have this form. It's Form 1126. And the student has to put in their name. This form is in the process of being updated, and we want to explicitly say Wake Tech email account. It's dated, it's signed. You get this in, you keep it on file, and then you can disclose information. Now, final course grades, let me go back one second. WebAdvisor will be the official means of final grade notification. We post in the academic calendar every year when final grades are due by. Check WebAdvisor. Does that help? So don't make it a,
Logic, though, behind saying get a disclosure for the email versus Blackboard, because if mom figures out the password for one,
Exactly.
though Blackboard is not secure in that sense.
Exactly.
They have a password, and we don't know.
Exactly. Exactly. And even with this modified policy in place, if information is disclosed to somebody beside the student, then we're still held accountable for that. So that's why I just want you to try to refrain from emailing grades if at all possible. Have this form on file. It'll CYAU for your employment, and I'll deal with it.
Since I've been here a few semesters, and I've always done my grades on Blackboard, but I always get the email.
Right.
Do I have the right to refuse? I had one student
You
say,
sure
oh, no,
do.
I did the form, and I was like, if I don't have it, if I don't see it, and I don't know who's on the other end of the email.
You certainly do.
Okay.
You most
So
certainly
I
can refuse that.
policy, I'm not going.
You sure can. Put it in your syllabus, or is it an online course, or you've got a course shell. Okay. I love that policy.
I'm assuming the same holds true for texting.
Oh, God, don't text anybody. Yes, we refuse to text anybody, except when the campus is on lockdown. No, don't text. No.
Okay, we're talking about grades, but what about attendance? Attendance is covered under FERPA. Okay, so if somebody's probation officer calls and wants to know if they've been attending class,
They need to come to the registrar's office and show me some documentation.
fantastic.
Send them to me. I get subpoenaed on a weekly basis. They do not pay me enough to work here.
Does the same thing go for a student who wants to know how many classes they've missed thus far in this semester?
Yeah. Yep. Their attendance information.
So did you say if a student asks you how many classes they've missed, you're not allowed to tell them the email?
If you've got a form on file that says you can discuss grades, but,
You can also post it on Blackboard.
Okay.
Like, put absences up there and just not put it as part of your grade.
And that's exactly right. Starfish will play Have y'all learned about that yet today? I think that's tomorrow. It's really good stuff. Mm-hmm. Of course, then the student goes, I don't know why I got an email. Okay. So here's some recent FERPA updates. I've got about 15 minutes. Health and safety emergencies. When did this really come to the forefront? Virginia Tech. Because people at Virginia Tech knew that the gunman had issues, things had been going on, and nobody relayed that information with anyone else because they were terrified of FERPA. Please do not do that, okay? So the feds really put in strong language in 2009 that if you have a concern over a student, you share it with whomever at this institution you need to. It doesn't mean start a gossip train, but it means go to your chain of command, discuss your concerns, FERPA be danged, okay? I have to document that in the student's record, but you have that right, okay? This is always a favorite one. I'm surprised nobody's asked me about this. Do you still peer grade? Okay. Lots of debate about peer grading. What the feds have decided is that when you pass out and you say, grade this person's paper, that does not violate FERPA. Who knew? But when it gets returned back to the instructor and they record it in the grade book, then it is protected by FERPA. I'm telling you, that's the feds for you. So you're just going to get a case of amnesia and forget whose paper you graded because it's now filed in the grade book. Don't ask me. I'll send you the verbiage. I promise I didn't make it up. Outsourcing. Now let me remember what outsourcing is. Outsourcing is mainly saying we have, if you look in our college catalog, we define all of our third-party vendor relationships that we have as a college. We've got Starfish. We've got the MAPS program that outlines student programs. We've got the Maxient software for student disciplinary issues. We've got a relationship with Barnes & Noble as the official college bookstore. We've got a lot of different third-party vendors, and what this says is that a third-party vendor with a written agreement with the college can serve as a school official. Not meaning that they can call up a student and request their grades, but that we can communicate email, ID numbers, and things like that. The data sharing, if you haven't already heard about the completion by design agenda that Wake Tech is heavily involved with through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation with 4 other community colleges in the state, and then there are some throughout the nation as well. This update, in the past, if we wanted to get involved in a data initiative and share and analyze data, I was an institutional researcher before I was the registrar, you would have to get approval from the Department of Education at the federal level to do that. That's no longer the case. You can enter into a mutual agreement of understanding. States can share data. It's all, we're data-driven decision making. So that was important to point out. Directory information, that's what I just showed you. In the past, directory information was directory information. You couldn't say, I'll give you this, but I won't give you this. But now we've got the directory information that you can give anyone unless there's a block, and we've got our limited use directory information. Student IDs, there have been some cases before the Supreme Court where a student felt that if they had a FERPA block on their record, they did not have to wear a student ID on campus. And that was struck down. We need to know who you are. Think about the health and emergency warnings. Okay? So that's just some FERPA updates. This is going to be really quick. Form 1167 is where students can designate access to someone. They can give it to their parent. They can give it to their baseball coach. They can give it to their wife. They can give it to their dog. We don't care as long as they fill out this form and it's signed and dated. The student has to give the name of the person they're giving access to, the relationship, a password, and a hint. We never remember the hint. And you can designate access to, if I was a student, I would say, sure, Mom, you can have access to my grades. No, not my grades, but my billing and my financial aid, so you can pay the bill. But you can't see my grades. I mean, that's what I would do. But usually it's for everyone. This form is submitted to the registrar's office, and I'm going to show you how we code it real quickly. Now, for the parents out there, if a parent claims their student as a dependent based on IRS code, that parent can get access to all the student's records without the student's consent. That makes very unhappy students very happy parents. This is Form 1168. Let me just go back one quick second. This form where the student gives access is valid indefinitely until it's retracted. So you don't want to give your husband access and then divorce him without remembering to retract your authorization because it's good, right? Now, the parents is only good from April to April because a parent could claim a child and then the next year not. So that's only good for 1 year. And once the child is no longer a dependent, the access is terminated. That's what this form looks like. It's 1168. The parent has to return this form to the registrar's office with a copy of their most recent state and federal tax returns. This is my website. You can find a lot of information here. The form's on Eagle's Nest. No matter which campus you are teaching on, there's a student services rep available that can help you out. Okay, I just want to show you in Colleague, our student information system. Hope you can see that. But when we get the form, we key it into the STRK, mnemonic, and you can pull it up and it tells you the date it was submitted, who's been given access, their relationship, the code, the hint, yada, yada. You likely will not have access to this. Call my office. We'll look it up for you. So if you have a parent email you, call us and we'll pull it up to see if the form's on file. And we do the same thing with the parent form. We just put an expiration date because of the tax year. And we were one of the first community colleges in North Carolina to start storing FERPA authorizations electronically. Health or safety, just remember, don't keep that a secret. Okay, I've got 5 minutes for a pop quiz. Okay, you still awake? Okay. Number 1, these are all true or false. Faculty have the right to inspect and review the education records of any student. True. False, true, true, false. Yes, it has to be relevant. You have to still have a legitimate educational interest. I cannot look up my son's girlfriend to prove that she is subpar, even though I'm the registrar, because my boss would fire me. Okay. Number 2, an advisor does not have to allow a student to inspect and review his or her personal notes about the student that are held in a file in the desk of the advisor. That's true, because those are sole possession notes. Okay, number 3. Admission records are education records and are covered under FERPA. Who said depends? It depends. If they didn't attend, then they don't. If they do attend, those admissions documents roll over into the educational record. Make sense? Number 4, students must be given the opportunity to inspect and review their education records within 10 days of a request. Why is it false? See, that's always my ending joke. We work at Wake Tech, and we're not going to get you anything in 10 days, okay? 45. See, hurry up and wait. Exactly. I do not have this cushy state job to get something ready in 10 days, okay? It's 45 days, and we really need the whole 45 days. Okay, this is the reading material I was telling you about. Check out the website. Have you heard the word benchmarking? You've already heard about benchmarking? I'll tell you what. So my benchmarking for this upcoming year is going to be to really develop kind of an online FERPA institute that we can all share amongst ourselves where you can always find your updates. I'll send you some quizzes to test your knowledge. I'll do a raffle. Maybe I can get you a parking space. So there's a lot more to come about FERPA. If you want a copy of the presentation, just send me an email and let me know. Again, it'll all be posted online. If you're ever in doubt, contact the registrar's office because we are always happy to be the bad guys for you, okay?